What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Beard. This go around, we're going to take a look at the Troubles. Yeah, this is part one. We'll be taking and doing part two on another day. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Oh, diddly-dee. A leprechaun put a bum in me potato. Ah! Now, with all the Irish people having been disgusted and left, we can start.
Oh, trying to make people mad right off the jump on this one.
Hello and welcome to Feature History, featuring the impatiently awaited and source of much pester, the Troubles, a rather understated name for a 30-year-long period of sectarian violence at its finest. It formed both the issues and the culture of our contemporary Northern Ireland, and is such a relevant topic today, you can expect many unwanted opinions in the comments. Enough about that though, we have 2 videos worth of controversy to get through here, and now. And later when the second part goes up. For the source of the Troubles you can go all the way back to 1169, with the Norman conquest of Ireland. But for the sake of brevity, I'm going to try to rush to the 20th century. Irish leaders for many centuries would struggle politically with English kings, and this peaked with the Protestant Reformation that saw the majority of England turn Protestant with their monarchy, and the majority of Ireland remain Catholic. A rebellion in the late 16th century saw new efforts to assimilate.
So, one went Protestant, one stayed Catholic. I can't see how any issues could arise from that whatsoever.
The Irish, by just replacing who the Irish were. Protestant English and Scottish were sent to Ireland to attempt to colonise the island, and saw success in the north, or as it is otherwise known by, Ulster. The following English Civil War and Glorious Revolution would see the Irish Catholics ally with the losing side, leading to penal laws being placed on them by the Protestant English Parliament. During the Great French Wars, the French would provoke a Protestant-led rebellion for Irish independence, which caused the British government to claim Ireland as a core part of their kingdom and bring them under further control. Concessions would be made with the Catholic emancipation in 1829, but it did little to improve their position. The damage had been done, and many Catholics were still made to live on the poorer land. A turning point would be the decimation caused by the Irish potato famine in 1845. 1 million deaths exacerbated by British mismanagement caused the Irish to demand for an Irish Parliament. Some demanded for full Irish independence, but the most popular movement was that of Home Rule. It'd see a self-governed Ireland within the United Kingdom. Its bill would finally be passed in 1912, much to the scrutiny of the mostly Protestant Ulster loyalists in the north. It'd however be placed on hold given the outbreak of the First World War. Some more radical Irishmen would come out against British rule in 1916, dubbed the Easter Rising. It'd fail, but when the insurrectionists were executed by the government, the rebels would become martyrs. Their fringe movement turned to public outrage.
Sometimes things like that, whenever you have a cause that many see as righteous, granted, you never want to take in. There's a lot of infighting and takeovers in the UK over just England taking and ruling, or basically ruling Scotland, Ireland, trying to take and have a monopoly over there, essentially. So whenever you got causes that, are deemed righteous by folks, and leaders of it, or just, people that stand out as figures to look at or look to, are killed, and they're given stuff like martyrdom status, the fervency can go from like a 5 or a 6 to a 12 real quick. So I just remember taking in, I just know I've read a little bit on the history and the violence and stuff like that happened, and just, holy crap. So, this being at the early parts of it, at least after the war, just, I can't imagine how much that taking lift up alright, this is it. It's truthful, boys. We're going, it basically declare war.
73 members of the Irish Republican Party, Sinn Féin, would be elected to the British Parliament in 1918, and would refuse to attend the Parliament in London, instead choosing to form an Irish Parliament in Dublin in 1919. This action would spark the War of the Independence that saw the Irish Republican Army brought together to fight for, well, an Irish Republic. The Anglo-Irish Treaty drawn up in 1921 would see a partitioned Ireland, one to be split between the mostly Catholic nationalist South and the mostly Protestant loyalist North. However, there was a catch, as there was a significant Catholic minority present in Northern Ireland. There was also a substantial amount of people generally not pleased with the treaty, refusing to recognise the compromised Irish Free State, and certainly refusing to recognise a British Northern Ireland. The stem of the IRA would break off as the anti-treaty IRA and fight in a civil war, only to be put down in 1923 and have the Free State be affirmed. These wars had caused a drift in Northern Ireland. The Protestant majority now suspected and occasionally feared the Catholic minority, who had grown to see the Protestants as oppressive and tyrannical.
You see, this is something that is much different than even from like here in the U.S. because we had our Civil War back in the 1860s. The reasoning behind this is much more deep set, like much more deep set. So the ferocity, just in a few years, it's explaining it. Everything that's the machinations of things. Just it's kind of. I don't know how to take and put this. It's crazy, to be honest with you. It's crazy because it's such a, you wouldn't want one faction from within your country to take and rule over. You know what I'm saying? You don't. And seeing as it's the religious aspects of it, just, man, that's some kind of deep set stuff that just, it's hard to, if you're not there or you're not right on top of it. That's you don't want to be ruled, but and on that point of not want to be ruled, having an extra thing like religious affiliation on top of it, the whole breaking of a country into two, that's another thing that's going to be, cause for a thorn in the side.
Over the course of several decades, segregation became normalized between the two communities. In hiring, education, and housing, Protestants and Catholics rarely mixed. The anti-treaty IRA still existed, however dormant. It had begun to see an influx of Marxists, much to the annoyance of the older, more traditional members. In the early 60s, Northern Ireland became subject to a civil rights movement, set on highlighting the inequalities in the province. Staunch loyalists feared it as an IRA front, a facade made to lead to a united Ireland. Civil rights protests began to lead to riots, as both partisan loyalists and the Royal Ulster Constabulary wished to crack down upon them. This led to a great number of Catholics rejecting the RUC's authority, attempting to create their own institutions, as seen in the self-declared autonomous area of Free Derry. Tensions had been rising steadily since 1966 and would climax in '69. A Protestant parade was set to move through a Catholic area of London Derry, or whatever.
That seems like a slightly bold move.
You want to call it, so you don't get mad. Protestants and Catholics would initially begin slinging any old crap at each other, leading to clashes. As the police moved in to crack down, battles erupted. This is known as the Battle of the Bogside. Hundreds of police and civilians were injured in the riots, and the officers of the constabulary would be pushed from the Bogside area. By the third day of rioting, things had become intense, and the Northern Irish Prime Minister requested British troops to relieve the officers. A battalion would intervene as a neutral force to separate the residents from the police and bring an end to the battle. With the news of the battle spreading quickly, agitated Irish nationalists began to break out in protest, and the Ulster Loyalists, fearing a total uprising, began to clash with nationalists, causing widespread violence across Northern Ireland. With an overwhelmed and accusedly biased
you bring in British troops. My whole, man, it seems like that would inflame stuff so bad, because you've already got a portion basically of the citizens who take and see you as an occupying force, that want to take and be part of Free Ireland. This is from an outsider's perspective, so please don't get overly pissed off at me. It seems like that would inflame stuff so bad. So I could see the reason why, the nationalist or the royalist and the nationalist would be so vehemently opposed to each other, because as a royalist, that means you're warning, all right, we've got this happening to our police here. Being for the military force, or as the other would see it, basically an occupying force coming. Like, that's, holy crap. That's like pouring gasoline on fire, to those who want a free country.
Constabulary not of much help, the British Army would have some serious trouble maintaining law and order. The army had initially been welcomed as a neutral force into the Troubles. The nationalists and loyalists both believed the army was there to protect them from the other. As the violence continued, however, some nationalists began to believe too little was being done to quell the violence against them. The divide in the population was clear, but beneath the surface another divide had formed. In the IRA, the traditionalist Republicans broke away from the Marxist bunch due to the perceived unwillingness of their leaders to protect nationalist communities. This new provisional IRA would soon dwarf its paternal organisation. They had, though, inherited a crumbling support. Few wanted the help of a paramilitary gang. This changed when in the Battle of St. Matthews in 1970, the local IRA beat back an armed loyalist mob in a shootout, serving to guard a Catholic nationalist enclave. It was a significant propaganda victory for the organisation. The British Army looked to disarm this violence. They would enter the infamous Falls Road area of Belfast, a nationalist stronghold, to seize arm dumps. They were thorough and harsh in their action, doing a significant disservice to their reputation. In the Falls Curfew, the army would come under harassment from both the IRA and angered residents, leading to the unfortunate death of 4 civilians. In August of 1971, the British Army and RUC would undertake Operation Demetrius, which sought to intern paramilitary members. However, their list held a strong nationalist bias, and the operation itself was subject to fumbles, leading to an upsurge in reactionary violence. Those interned reported torture. 2 IRA members were killed, 2 soldiers had also been killed, not to mention 20 civilians. It wasn't a good look, to say the least. With nationalist support of the army at an all-time low, and the hopes of defeating the IRA militarily dashed, the soldiers would be turned to local policing, checkpoint duty, and riot control. The unpopular policy of internment continued as well. Imprisonment without trial was seen as the only logistical way to deal with the unrest. In January of 1972, both the army...
That probably only served to inflame things, because due process and all that.
And the police were deployed to oversee an anti-internment march in Derry. British paratroopers were present, and they had been despised for their role in killing 11 people during Operation Demetrius. Small groups began to lob rocks at the paratroopers, provoking the paratroopers to open fire in return. The crowd would quickly devolve into chaos. 28 people would be shot and 14 died. Given the circumstances of their deaths, the paratroopers were decried for their actions, and the British Army at large felt the ire of the nationalists, Catholics and more. In what would become known as Bloody Sunday, it had put a definite end to any idea of a honeymoon.
Alright, so there's part 1. Just... Man, it's... And I want to take and pick my words. When you've got such contrasting, like you've got people that are, we want to take and be under British protection. You've got others that want to be part of a free Ireland. When you've got Catholic and when you've got Protestant, and a deep-rooted dislike between the two sects due to history. Due to all the different, the Catholics took and did this. Now that we're in rule, we're gonna do this. The tit for tat stuff and the deep rooted, and just, it seems like this period of time was a result of just like a perfect storm. And it sounds like so many innocent people just had to jump off of this the first couple years. Oh man. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at part 2. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.